Is your attention often divided, making it really hard to concentrate on your current projects or even your dreams? What if you could improve your focusing abilities? So in today's video, I'm going to explain what's causing you to be distracted, and it may not be what you think it is, and also how you can start to improve your focus. Here's the thing. The reason that we are struggling to focus isn't because we're distracted. It's because our brains are overstimulated, and there is a really key difference between those two things. And that key difference is going to enable you to start to make change in this area. Our lives have become a series of screens. We might wake up to our phone and jump on straight away and start looking at several apps all at once. And then perhaps while we're having breakfast, we might then jump onto our iPad, start surfing, start looking at YouTube videos, start shopping. And then we come from breakfast, we flip open our laptops and we're at work, maybe with our phone beside us or maybe with our iPad beside us. And so our mind has gotten very used to having these multiple sources of entertainment. And so we scatter our minds and it becomes very overstimulated. We've become really used to having an interruption from various different directions around us. And so it really helps to understand that then trains our mind. It becomes overstimulated, and so our mind will then continue to seek out those distractions. So it's not the distraction itself that's the issue, but rather the fact that we've trained our mind to seek out those multiple distractions because it's gotten so used to being overstimulated from diverse sources. It helps to really understand that, because the most common phrase that I hear from the writers and the creative entrepreneurs that I work with is that, things are just so hectic at the moment, life is just so busy, there are just too many distractions for me to be able to concentrate, and they're too busy to focus on their dreams. And so if we place that source of influence in the external world, like I just can't do anything about it, it's the external world being too noisy, we're very powerless in that story. And we just get this sense that we have to just wait for the world to calm down. But the world isn't going to calm down because the world is as it is. What has to calm down is our minds and the way our minds are seeking distraction. And so that's the work that we're going to start looking at today. So I'm going to explain how you can start increasing your attention span. So that's what we're looking at in this video. But something else that can be causing that distraction is that you're not actually clear what to focus on. So I've made a previous video that's really going to help you get that clarity on what to focus on. So we'll put a link to that video in the description below. So today's video is very much looking at increasing that attention span, but it's taking it as a given that you know what it is you want to focus on. So if you're struggling there, then you want to check out that other video. Now, I'm going to come to a quote which I find really useful, but just to give some explanation to this quote is to let you know that our brains have what researchers call a novelty bias. So that means that our minds are actually wired to seek out novelty. So that's just automatically what they're going to do, meaning that we are wired to be distracted by anything that's newer than what we're already paying attention to. So here's a quote according to cognitive neuroscientists. This novelty bias is more powerful than some of our deepest survival drives. Humans will work just as hard to obtain a novel experience as we will to get a meal or a mate. The difficulty here for those of us who are trying to focus amid competing activities is clear. The very brain region we need to rely on for staying on task is easily distracted by shiny new objects. Just the awareness of an unread email sitting in your inbox can effectively reduce your IQ by 10 points. So that really helps put it into perspective. This innate wiring, which is even stronger in some cases than finding a meal or a mate, so strong to seek out a new experience that just by knowing that there is that new experience in your email inbox, it's going to reduce your IQ by 10 points. So we really see what we're up against if the mind has been overtrained into seeking out those novelties. Now, as soon as we seek out something new, our brain rewards us with a hit of dopamine, essentially a flurry of pleasure. And so again, we want that. We know that every time we open up our phone and we have a new notification, that's the novelty. It doesn't matter what that notification is, whatever platform you're on, but just simply the newness of a notification gives us a hit of pleasure. And we're going to keep seeking that out. So we're going to keep reaching for our phone. We're going to keep wanting to get that dose of pleasure. For me, I think it just helps to really be aware of the science behind this. Now, I actually stopped using a mobile phone. I stopped using a mobile phone several years ago. I found myself living in an area that had very little phone signal as it was. I was living deep in the forest, and I just got really bored with suddenly going into a place of having signal and having all of these messages come in, and then having to get back to these messages, and often listening to voicemails from people that were saying it's so hard to get hold of you. So I just thought, do you know what? I'm just going to stop using my phone. And I cannot tell you what a difference that has made to my life, because my mind, it's so much easier for me to focus because I haven't trained in such easy access to that novelty and such easy access to that dopamine hit. Now, I'm not saying that in order to increase your attention span, you need to stop using your phone, but it's to really be aware, how much are you training your mind to seek out that distraction? So how overstimulated is your mind? And you're going to become aware of that by knowing every time you go onto a new device, every time you open up a new app and you seek out that novelty, your brain is going to be used to having that amount of pleasure hits in one day. And so it's going to be seeking them out. And so what we want to do in order to increase our attention span is we need to start reducing the many ways that we are seeking out that novelty. Now, it's one of those things that doesn't happen straight away. I mean, if we think about anything that we're trying to give up, or anything that someone might be addicted to that they are then trying to give up, there's going to be a period of discomfort. And the period of discomfort that comes when we start to increase that attention span is boredom, because we're not getting those pleasure hits. We're not getting those distractions, and the mind will feel really bored. And that's the mind's way of saying, I want you to go and get that hit of pleasure. And so it's to have that reminder that when you are increasing your attention span, you need to reward yourself. Great job, you're doing such a great job. So you need to give yourself that hit of pleasure. Otherwise, the boredom can become very uncomfortable. So that's something, again, that I'm really well practiced in. Whenever I do a good piece of work, if I've sat down and I've been working for an hour or so and I've been really focused, I really reward myself, but I reward myself with what I tell myself. So I start to get into a new cycle. I start to get into a cycle where I seek out long periods of concentration because I love the reward that I tell myself at the end of that. So in order to make change, I think it can be really useful to start to break things down. So grab your notebooks if you haven't already, and I want for you to start to get clear on what all of those novelties are for you. Once you know where they are, you're going to be more aware of them when they happen. If you're just like, oh, you know, I've got novelties, you're not going to notice them every time you seek them out. But as soon as you make a list and you're like, okay, I have a novelty of going to have a look what's in the fridge. I have a novelty of checking my email. I have a novelty of going onto Facebook and seeing if anyone's responded to a post. I have a novelty of seeing if anyone I follow on YouTube has posted a new video. So start to list all of those novelties that you know that you're seeking out, and those areas areas that you're getting pleasure from. So I would certainly give yourself a few minutes to get those all down so that you basically step into a place of honesty and you see what they all are. So once you've got your list of novelties, the next step is to start to get really clear about the cost. Now, the cost is a really important one to look at. I don't mean financial cost. I mean, if you don't make change, what's the cost of not making change? Because we can so easily step into that place of denial, like, oh God, I've got all of these novelties and do I want to not have them anymore? But then what are you weighing it up against? Do you want to keep having those novelties of like, ooh, I got a new email, or ooh, I got a new comment, or ooh, there was something in the fridge that I liked? Or do you want to create the life and career that's going to bring you satisfaction, happiness, stability, fulfillment? And so when you start to look at the cost, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm seeking out these novelties, but what are they really bringing me? Like, it's such a short-term pleasure versus the cost of this long-term life and career that's going to be way more rewarding, way more pleasurable than finding something in my inbox. So take a few minutes again to start to jot down the cost. If you continue to seek out these novelties, what does it mean you're sacrificing? If you continue to use your phone in the way that you are, what does that mean in terms of your attention span? What does that mean you're not going to be able to focus on and concentrate on? So looking at the cost, it really takes you into that place of total honesty, and it really helps you see, my God, if I don't make change, that's what I'm sacrificing. Because we can get into this place where we're like, oh, it'll be okay, like things will kind of sort themselves out on their own. And the thing is, they don't. We don't create change unless we change. We can't wait for something outside of us to change in order for our lives to be different. And if we are in that place, we're going to be waiting a long time. So we want to get really active and empowered. We want to make change ourselves. Okay. So let me just take you now through some few simple things that you can do to start to really diminish the way that your brain has been overstimulated and to start to really increase your attention span. So research shows that it takes around 8 days to fully calm down and rest an overstimulated mind. Maybe you've had that experience where you've gone on holiday and it has taken several days before you've kind of finally just been able to like really get into the vibe and the relaxation of the holiday. That's often why some people are like, I have to go on a 2-week holiday, because if I just go for a week, I'm literally just beginning to relax before it's time to come home again. So it takes the brain around 7 to 8 days to really come into that state of calm, to really relax and to really reverse from that overstimulated place. So you want to give yourself that amount of time. You want to give yourself a week before things start to get easier. Now, when your mind is less stimulated, it's going to seek out less distractions. So that means that even if a distraction occurs, you're not going to be so drawn to wanting to get involved with it. And again, maybe you've had that experience when you have really been lost in a project. Maybe there's someone knocking at the door, but you didn't even hear them. Sometimes I've been in a situation, so I have a landline. Sometimes I've been in a situation where the phone's been ringing, but it hasn't stopped me because I just wanted to stay really focused. I haven't been like, oh, I want to see who's on the phone. I'm like, actually, what's more interesting is the pleasure that I'm getting from my increased attention span and really focusing with the project that I'm working on. So you will notice that the less stimulated your brain is, the less it's going to seek out those distractions. And inspiration comes when we are not in that state of overstimulation and distraction. And so you're also going to notice that once you start to calm the mind down, you're going to start coming up with more ideas. You're going to start coming up with inspirational images and feelings, all of those which are going to be able to feed into your life. So that's the benefit. We've been having these kind of short-term novelty, pleasure-seeking activities with our phone, for example, when the long-term benefit of really coming into that state of minimal stimulation and increased attention span is that we're now being entertained by our own ideas, by our inspiration. But it takes time to get to that place, which is why we often fall off the wagon. We're just so bored with a brain that isn't offering up any gems. But eventually you will get to a place where your mind is offering up all of the wonderful novelties in terms of new ideas or in terms of wonderful phrases or sentences that you can then put into your writing, for example. So I'm not saying stop using your phone like I did, but what I am saying is have a disconnection ritual. So it might be that some of my clients have a disconnection ritual where they switch their phone off from 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. And so they really have that whole evening where they're getting used to not having those novelties coming in and distracting them. They may have a total non-screen disconnection. So really from 8 p.m. right through to the following morning, they're not using any devices at all. For me, I like to have one day a week where I come off devices. So I don't use my laptop or my iPad for one day in that week. And yeah, if I've had a busy week, if I've been really engaging with clients and I've been engaging a lot on social media, because a lot of my networking happens on social media, I may come to that day at the weekend and I do feel myself a little restless, but I know that feeling now and I know that I can get through that feeling and I know the benefit of really having that day when I come off devices. So it can be useful to have a whole day a week. So a disconnection period is really beneficial. It may be also to think about, it's also useful to think about smaller chunks of time, like 15 minutes where you literally do nothing. And by doing nothing, I mean lying on the sofa, looking out of the window, or going for a long walk. So a long walk is okay because it's got gentle motion and it doesn't require too much concentration. That's why people enjoy things like knitting, because you're taking small action. So there's a little bit of your attention that's on the action, but your mind is being allowed to wander. So the mind is completely unstimulated and it's being allowed to do what it wants itself. For me, I really enjoy cooking, so I will take time. I cook all my food from scratch, so I like to take time every evening to just spend chopping the food, and I find my mind just wanders. I actually got into a habit of listening to podcasts when I was cooking, and I realized that I wasn't getting as much benefit. So for me now, cooking is my quiet time. So it's to seek out those periods in the day where you're not having that stimulation coming in. So whether you're walking or knitting or cooking or drawing or just lying on the sofa watching the clouds floating out of the window, but there's no external stimulation coming in. And it's important to understand that it's about commitment. So knowing that first 8 days, it's going to be challenging because the mind is going to be really wanting its distraction. It's going to be overstimulated. It's going to be wanting that pleasure. So you need to just keep really being with yourself, like really congratulating yourself for having another day under your belt and knowing it will be challenging at the start. You will feel that boredom, but the benefit long term is so much better. So when you get through that 8 days, you're going to start to see some results. You're going to feel better. You're going to notice that your attention span is increasing, and you're going to start to notice those ideas coming in. You're going to start to notice your ability to entertain yourself, which is a lovely place to be in. And when you get to that place, you're going to feel a lot more in control. You're going to feel that you are able to focus on your dreams or your current projects. So the writers and entrepreneurs I'm working with, we're increasing their levels of focus so that they're able to do the work they need to create, live and earn the way that they want. I've actually got a masterclass which I'm offering free at the moment, which you can watch if you like the idea of that, if you like the idea of being able to create and live and earn just the way that you want. It's a 45-minute class. Like I said, it's free at the moment. You can grab it in the link below. We'll pop a link in the comments, fill in your details, and we can send you the class straight away. Now, I'd love to know from you. Let me know in the comments below, what did you take from this video? What can you commit to in terms of reducing the stimulation that you're giving your brain? What can you commit to in terms of making sure you give yourself that first 8 days to start to calm your mind? Really hope that you enjoyed this video today. And like I said, there's another video on focus that we will also link to in the description below. So check that one out as well. And I will see you next week. Take care till then.